Let's turn attention to the United States. Texas is still reeling. At least 161 people remain missing and 111 confirmed dead after devastating flash floods swept through central part of the state, with the county the hardest hit in the region. Governor Abbott says rescue crews will not stop until every missing person is accounted for. But for many, hope is now turning to grief. Texas resident and real estate developer Ejike joins me for more on this. But before that, we'll take more details of this in this report.
Search and rescue efforts continue around the clock in what Governor Greg Abbott calls one of the deadliest natural disasters in recent state history. 94 persons have died in Kerr County alone, many swept away as they slept, unaware of the wall of water heading their way. Among the victims, 27 girls and counselors from Camp Mystic, a Christian summer camp destroyed in 30 minutes by a 30-foot wall of water. Volunteers, many exhausted and muddy, say the terrain is making recovery efforts painfully slow. More than 250 rescue personnel are deployed in Kerrville alone, with 13 Black Hawks and Reaper drones combing through the wreckage. But hope for survivors is fading. In nearby New Mexico, at least 3 persons have died in flash floods that engulfed the village of Ruidoso. Officials say a 15-foot river surge swept away houses and lives. President Trump is expected to visit affected areas on Friday. As the floodwaters recede, what remains is heartbreaking, loss, and a desperate race against time.
Ejike joins me for more on this very shocking and devastating images that we are seeing from Texas. It's good to have you join us on the world now. Like I said, it's devastating what we are seeing happening in Texas, just the force of nature and the violent nature of this water. But you're in Texas. What more can you tell us about the situation on ground now?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's very unfortunate. We didn't see this coming. We had the weather forecast, and but within hours, the rain came so heavy and overwhelmed the system. I mean, the video doesn't lie. That's a real thing there. And in Texas, where we are, I'm in Dallas, Texas. We're about 300 and something miles north, but it's still Texas. And it shows, the force of nature, the mother nature. I mean, any engineering solution you have can be overwhelmed by, the force of nature. So it's very unfortunate, the loss of life. And we always said, hopefully it doesn't happen again, but it always happens. And what are we going to do to prevent? At least what we're trying to do now is to have, a warning system so that when we say evacuate, people can really, evacuate. But sometimes even when you do that, we saw what happened with Katrina about 20 years ago, and it's still people died. Every year in America, we always have a natural disaster. If it's not mudslide, it's not fire, it's rain or earthquake. In Oklahoma, we have what they call the tornado alley and California earthquake. So it's just one of those things we have to deal with. And if there's any way we're going to make efforts to prevent it, we will. But it's very, very doubtful that it's going to be. We just want to be able to, give people enough, warning when these things we see it coming so that they can evacuate. So in Texas, we're having that challenges now.
The changing climate is one that has, been of concern, not just in the United States, Texas, but in other countries, to be specific. We saw President Trump signing a federal disaster declaration at the governor's request, allowing him to deploy his own teams to encourage, this recovery effort. And he has said everyone missing will be found. But for you, do you think this is a rescue operation now or just a recovery effort?
Well, all of the above. We don't give up until all the last effort is made to see who is alive that can be rescued, or it could just get into recovery to see if we can find the bodies that are missing and make sure that they are given proper burial. Nobody foresaw this coming. That part of Texas, if you go back to 1921, there's been several years of serious disaster. I think the most recent one was 1998. It's a river that, in less than 2 hours or so, it rose to 29 feet. That's three-story building. And, the force of water is huge. It would destroy anything in the path. And that's what you've seen. People just thought, okay, I can outrun it. Yeah, sometimes you think you can, and then you will not be able to. Yesterday, we had some rain in Dallas. I had to stay by the backside of my house, making sure the water doesn't flow into the pool and making sure my drain system is working. These are the things we have to deal with because Mother Nature, again, is more powerful than any human engineering solution.
One can only imagine the level of devastation. But let's talk about the economic impacts of this. That Texas is one of the agricultural states. There is a lot of, ranches there. What's the likely economic impact of this flood at this time?
The impact is obvious. Homes are destroyed, cars are destroyed, farms are affected. We haven't quantified it. I'm sure those people that are going to be doing some of that assessment are on the job now. We're going to find out this is probably going to run in the billions or the hundreds of millions of dollars. But that's not the case. So, we're going to find a way to finance those things. There are some other things that happened in the past we haven't even been able to finally address, and then you keep having more. So, but at the end of the day, the economic impact is huge, and especially with the loss of life. 101 people dead and 161 missing is not, even if it's one person, it's still a huge impact. So, in terms of real estate and the ranch, some of the ranches, in Texas, we have a ranch that we just call walking ranch. It could just be a ranch for vacation, like, the Mystic Camp, it's just where people go to hang out. It's not to produce cow or any agricultural stuff. That part of Texas is not for the agricultural purposes, just because it's the hilly part of Texas. People buy, acres of land and turn it into a vacation weekends kind of hangout. We have a whole lot of that all over. The size of Texas is almost Nigeria slightly bigger than Texas. So that's just Texas is the largest of the 48 lower states. And so we have a lot of coverage areas to deal with.
Mr. Kwa, the larger the states, the larger the impacts that is expected. And this sort of crisis now looks like a new norm. What do you think can be done in terms of, warning and preparation in times like this, not just for the United States, but for other nations experiencing this?
Well, you go back to the Bible times, we've had flooding, we've had fire, we've had everything that we have in. Now we had it in as long as human beings have lived. We've had earthquakes. You saw what happened in Japan some years ago. Tsunami just came in and wiped out a bunch of stuff. So what we're doing now is relying on technology. What will technology do is to give us notice. Hey, this is coming, evacuate. And even when you tell people to evacuate, there's going to be a direction, because they have to be moving away from the source of the danger. So what if you don't have an evacuation route that is enough to accommodate the people? Because people are going to be scrambling, they're panicking. Is that, okay, do I take my dog? Have I taken everything that I need? And I'm going to get on the road. And then if that road is congested or packed, how do you get away? Right. Again, we have examples of that, people being trapped on an evacuation route. So what the technology is doing, of course, the climate change, people will now have reason to say whatever they want to say, which is fine. The point is that the Earth has always had its own way of dealing with things, and no science, no engineering has been able to stop it.
All right. We'll wait out to see the impact of, this recovery effort, this search and rescue effort, especially by the state government. But that's a fine place to leave the conversation for now. You're a resident in Texas. We can only wish you were safe. But thank you for talking to us. Texas resident and real estate developer, Ejike Opah. Thank you for talking to us at this time.
Thank you for having me.